Okay, it's setting up. You guys can log off. Let me know, Lily. Text me.
All right.
Okay, we're live. Hey, this is Elliot Fishman, and we're trying to do something a little bit different this time because we have a special guest, and you're not supposed to sit next to each other unless you're wearing a mask. So we managed to figure out, Lily and everyone, to figure out how to use Facebook Live and Zoom at the same time. So Stephanie learned all the tricks, and so we're live, hopefully. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce B. And B's retiring this week. I have no idea why, but she decided after 40 plus years at Hopkins to give up the post. I just put in perspective where I met B. I met her at Hopkins, obviously, but I'll tell you how long ago it was. So I shouldn't tell you how many years, but in the old days, at that time, disco was very popular. And there was a place in Baltimore, I actually thought about it. I remembered something, Gerard's. It was this club you had to belong to, but you had to be a cool person. So none of us belonged. Those days, I'm about 6'1", but I was about 6'8" in those days because I wore clogs and I had a perm. So I was about 6'8", 9. And we went, and they had a special night for Hopkins people and then Sinai people. They were trying to get the referendum to come in. And I remember with B at Gerard's and a whole lot of other uncool people, and I remember the
flash dancing.
I still have issues with strobe lights ever since that day. But anyway, B, it's great to have you here. And what I asked B to speak about is just, and I thought maybe we'll have a few conversations, but this first one is just tell us what you think, what's changed, what surprised you, what didn't surprise you. We started in the era of non-spiral CTs doing about a patient every 45 minutes, 1 minute reconstruction time, 15-second, 10-second scans till where we are today. So why don't you take over?
Okay, great. Should I share screen?
Yeah. See, I guess so. I don't want to be on. Go ahead. Let me see if I can do it. Okay,
did that work?
I hope so. Okay, keep talking. I hope so.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Yeah, that's a kind of a scary memory from Dr. Fishman. But let me just see if I can open this. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So we started, as Dr. Fishman said, there's many things that have changed over the 40 years. And obviously scanner evolution and workflows. And even when I think about the staff, my employee demographics, I've seen all the generations through the years. And we started in body CT, what was formerly called body CT, with a couple of scanners. We had one for back in, I think in 83, and then added another one a few years later. But everything was pretty basic then. We had Dr. Fishman actually inserting the IVs and dripping the contrast in. We had plenty of time to do these patients, believe me. And we scanned during the day, and by 3 o'clock we were done. And Dr. Fishman and Dr. Siegelman would go ahead and read all the scans and meet with the clinicians and everything. So we actually had a few years of this type of workflow. Things improved a little bit on the scanners, but not much. It was pretty status quo for a few years. But we learned a lot actually in those few years because CT was in its infancy. So we were trying to figure it out as we went along. And we added a couple scanners in the outpatient center. We put a scanner in the oncology, Weinberg, and in about 2003, I think is when we put the ED scanner in. But we went along, and until the game changer slip ring technology came into play, that was really when things took off. And that's when we could actually scan, have the ability to scan in one breath hold, either the chest or the abdomen. And we had the old volume zoom started us off with the slip ring technology. So that was incredible. But as we started to grow and expand, our capabilities expanded, our applications expanded, our volumes really went up. And I started as a CT tech. So I kind of was intimate all the way through knowing all about CT. And I kind of worked my way up and became in charge of CT. So, but I always knew many things change, but our absolute focus and mission was always patient safety and care and employee safety and care. Those were two missions that we've always stuck to all these years. That's never changed for us. So as I look back, there were things we were starting to grow. There were a lot of moving parts, as they say. So some of our challenges now were, how do we keep that high patient safety? And how do we engage the staff, but grow the business, right? Our capabilities, our volumes were going up. How do we do all of this without sacrificing what was important to us? So some of the things is what we looked at our workflow. So example, in any technologist, when they scan a patient, there's a multitude of tasks that they have to complete from the very beginning to prep all the way to the end. So we understood very quickly that if we had multiple techs doing multiple jobs at the same time, we can be a lot more productive and efficient. So even to this day, we have a flow tech who takes care of the prep. We have the scanner tech, of course, who scans. And of course, we have the runner tech who does the injection. And we were so efficient, when we still are, with that kind of, with all those roles. And the techs knew exactly what was expected of them. There was no overlap. It was a very safe environment. So that was one thing that we did early on, and it was actually a great way of doing things. One of the other things that we did was, as we grew, Dr. Fishman couldn't put all the IVs in anymore, so we retired him on that. And we got a radiology nurse. We needed efficiency. So the radiology nurses, we have a great relationship with them, came in and they put IVs in. We needed the techs to do tech things and have the nurse put the IVs in. And that was really a more efficient way of doing it as well. And plus they were there obviously to help with extravasations and reactions and so forth. So that was another component that we put into place. Other things that we did were, well, I want to mention the relationship of the radiologist with the technologist. That was so critically important, even early on, and that was our foundation. I started with Dr. Fishman with a couple of techs, and we scanned all day long, and we had that interaction, what was best for the patient. And we were, CT was new to all of us. What was the best? How do we tailor each of the protocols for these patients? But that relationship continued. The techs are really love that the radiologists care about them. And we've continued relationships with the radiologists to better improve the patient care and safety all through these years. So that has been critical to the success of CT. And some of the other things, overnight, I put a scanner in the ED around 2003. We actually just scanned during the day and would get called in, but was quickly realized that we were getting called in every night. So it became a 24/7 operation. And part of that challenge was, how do we consistently have high image quality from day to evening to overnight? We needed that consistency. So one of the things that we did when we hired overnight, we put in really well-trained, highly competent, skilled technologists who had high skill sets of critical thinking, problem solving, and this was really important as the years went through. And even to this day, our overnight staff are godsend. They're just absolutely gold. They're a great crew. They have, think about it. Your overnight they don't have the support, the senior management support, the, other coworkers. They just can't call over and say, hey, can you send some help? They have to do it on their own, and they do an incredible job. So that was one of our challenges, and we did a fantastic job. Now, throughout these years, one of our big challenges is staffing. It's always been staffing. And if we look at, training techs, we obviously know a well-trained, competent CT tech will always perform at their highest, right? At a very high standard. So, and this is key to maximizing your patient safety, right? So an engaged staff, you're going to have better safety features, right? So one of the things that we did back in early 2000s, we started some classes on CT imaging. And it's evolved over the years to now what we have is an accredited program, and we have a comprehensive didactic program, and they rotate through all of the clinical areas. So we have been so successful with the CT program. We get the majority of our techs from the CT program now. And it's an opportunity for X-ray techs in the hospital to, have a path through to CT. So it's been a great career path for a lot of people. One of the key points also is, one of the things is, okay, how do the techs continue to learn, continue to be at a high standard? Well, one of the things that we do is in the school, our staff teach the students. So this is critical because they have to learn, they have to update their lectures, so they're learning as well as the student, and they're teaching their future coworkers. So they want to do a really good job. So that's been very successful for us as well. So what other things have we done to keep the techs up to date and make sure their image quality? We have image quality audits that we do once a month. Dan Wetzel is our ED educator, and he's done an incredible job of having the staff complete every month our image audits. And that looks at the technical parameters, the contrast enhancement, and some of the EPIC, which is our electronic medical records. So that has been and when we look at the results, where are we, where do we need to do some work? What does it take to make sure our staff are current in CT? So those are some of the things that we do. But I would say one of our biggest challenges right now, I would say, is staffing. For several reasons. One, obviously, budget restraints have played a role, and we have to also do more with less. So we have to be more creative. I mean, we're going to have challenges all the time, but it's a reminder to us that we really need to keep our eye on what's important, and that's staff engagement and patient safety. So that's challenges is help remind us what we need to do. So, looking through the years, a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same in the sense that, we still want the best CT technologists in our department. We want them to be at their potential. So what we do also is look at their strengths. Everybody loves working in their strength. So some techs are great technically. Some techs are great at workflow. Some techs are great at the attention to detail. So if you know this about your staff and you can help them, gear them towards either teaching or operations or whatever that makes, that you can enhance their strengths. And when anybody works within their strengths, they're much happier. So that helps with engagement. You know, we've really worked hard on making sure our staff are engaged all these years and to enhance their potential. And with that, it has shown, we have taken what's called the Gallup survey. It measures engagement. And we've seen as our engagement scores went up over the years, so did our SAQ scores, which is the safety scores. And it was a complete direct collaboration of going up. So it is so important in departments to keep that staff engagement high so that your safety, your patient safety level is high as well. So just, you know, there've been many years, there's been many radiologists that we've come in contact. There's residents and fellows, and I can't count how many technologists have been through, but it's been an incredible journey. And there are so many lessons that we've learned, and, you know, a lot of mistakes, but we learn from mistakes, and that's, you know, how you go forward. So definitely been an incredible journey for sure. Do you have any questions for me, Dr. Fishman?
Okay, so thanks, B. So if I had to, that was terrific. But if we managed to get through the part where I had to stop sharing my screen so that you would be full screen. So we managed to do that instead of people looking at a very tiny postage of my screen, my screensaver. But if you know, as you step down, someone else is going to replace you. We kind of know, all of us, regardless of what level we are, life goes on, as we know. Yeah. But if you had to give one advice, you know, there was a story Bill Brody told about when he was giving up the chair, when he took over as chairman. The prior chairman left him 3 envelopes in his desk, and he said, "Don't open the envelopes unless unless it's a terrible crisis." And he had a crisis. He opened the first envelope. It said, blame the prior chairman. And then the second envelope opened, blame the prior chairman. And the third one was, start looking for a new job. But if you had to, you know, advice for the person following you, what would your best advice be, you know, besides everything you said already? Is there any one thing that, you know, you would say to someone?
Well, I would say develop and nurture that rapport with your staff. I mean, really listen to your CT techs and your staff. I would say having that relationship, building that trust and respect of your staff. I think that is so key, is having that foundation of trust, because once you have that, then you can move forward. Your staff needs to trust you. You need to trust your staff, right? So I think that is the most important thing. And for you know, Becky, who's coming to replace me, take that time to get to know the staff again. Take that time to build that trust, because everything else is built on that.
Okay, so if I had to also ask you, this is more of a question that happens to many people. So, you know, you and I worked together. You were a tech, I was the doc, and we worked together for many years. We had 2 techs in CT, and then we expanded to 3 and 4, and now it's 40. And at some point, you know, you scanned 100% of the time, and it kept dropping down, where physically you really don't scan now.
Right.
So somebody, what advice do you give people, you know, who want to be supervisors, managers, whatever, knowing that you know, how do you give up things, and, you know, how, you know, your relationship changes to other people and what you find satisfaction in. And there's a lot of satisfaction scanning the patients correctly, doing the things correctly. But if you're not scanning, your job changes, obviously. And how
Right.
do how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? How would you recommend people think about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's important that, obviously as a manager, I'm not going to be scanning, but as supervisors, I think it's key. And I tell them all this time, they need to be in the clinical area with their staff. And I think they need to be scanning beside their staff on some days. Absolutely. That is how they know what is going on with them. They know what the issues are. They and they're working side by side. That's a team. I think one of the things that we have so valuable in CT is the team, or we're so team oriented. We work as a team. We take our strengths and make the best out of them. So and it's hard when people come up through the ranks. CT techs come up and they become supervisors, and there's a transition because now their responsibilities are different, and they were fantastic as CT techs. So now they're supervisors, and they have to learn how to be good leaders and how to manage people. And that is definitely a transition that they have to make. And they, it becomes a different relationship for them with their coworkers.
Right. And then I guess I could ask you also, and this is sort of more of a crystal ball thing. I mean, over all the years, there are always challenges, right? Every time there's a new challenge, just like, as you said, having 2 scanners rather than 1, having a night shift, covering the weekends, all of, it was a lot easier doing 8 to 5,
Yeah.
4 days a week, 5 days a week. But so if you're looking ahead, what do you see? I mean, it's always hard to predict the future, but what do you see as the challenges? I mean, obviously COVID-19 is a challenge, but even let's say it's the ultimate challenge, and let's say we get through that. But what do you see the challenges over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years from a technologist perspective? Technology will consistently develop, but what's the challenges for the techs?
I think for the challenges will be our budget constraints. I think it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. I think we've got to be really creative in how we train the staff and how we keep them engaged and how we keep patient safety at a high level. I think that as time goes on, we're just not going to be able to do as many patients as we normally do because we're not going to have the staffing. So I think that's where we have to accept that, in the old, before we always thought more patients, but I don't know if that's going to be in the future. ED, obviously, we've got to scan those patients, but outpatient setting is changing. Inpatient, we obviously have to do that, but I just think that we're going to have to be really creative on how we cover shifts overnight with less staffing. I'm not sure how that is, but we're already feeling it with the COVID. Now I know it's the COVID environment right now, but I'm not sure the lasting effects of it may go on for a couple of years.
So one thing with the COVID, and maybe we'll do this the last question since we've been on a bit, and we can do this again a different day, is, I think, it was much easier when we were smaller, right? There was a couple of techs, a couple of docs, and everyone worked very closely together. We were in literally one room. Now, we're scanning in 5 different places. The doctors are working shifts. The COVID thing has put us where we're doing things with teleradiology. People are at home. People tend to sit in the reading room. In the old days, we sat next to the scanner, right? We were just injecting, we were doing, it was more of a hands-on thing. Now, a lot of the physicians wouldn't even know how to do a protocol detect. They didn't know how to do it. And I'm not talking about Hopkins, I'm talking in general. And I'm not, again, this question is not so much for Hopkins, but how do you see that challenge? So much of medicine is going to teleradiology. The doctors aren't there, or the group reading is remote. It's a different group. It's not even the radiologist, because they're reading in California and you're sitting in Baltimore or Chicago or any place else as Jackson Brown would say. How do you see that as a difference, as a challenge for the technologists, a challenge for quality, a challenge for optimizing protocols? How do you see that as being a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a real challenge, and I think that's, it's kind of sad because that relationship with radiologists is so important for the technologists, and that's how they learn. So I think now the tech educator responsibility is expanded. They really need to come in and make sure that everybody is current, that there's continuous learning, and it's, you still can be creative. You can still come in and have you know Zoom meetings or lectures. I mean, it's important that the staff have resources still to to learn, and that's why CTisus is so important. They have podcasts and lectures and so forth. But I think it's going to be more of an effort to make sure that the staff is doing current things like that, and lectures and watching, we used to have committees. We used to have radiation safety committee and things like that, where the staff would participate in articles and talk about what things that we need to do for safety and so forth. And maybe that's what we need to get back to and to help the staff stay current as well.
Well, also, you lived through the good old days when before there was a whole issue with companies and hospitals.
Yeah.
The old days, the G's of the world or the Amershams. You would have lunch where they'd bring in a video or something with safety or injection, something really good, and you got free pizza and people would watch it. So it wasn't necessarily that they were making you buy their product. It was more of an educational perspective. And I think, now, of course, it's a bigger challenge. No one's traveling. Every meeting I'm speaking canceled. I don't, I'm hoping, I've run 37 straight years of courses. I'm going to do something for the 38th year, maybe just do 2 lectures just to say I did it. But I don't think you're going to see any meetings if everything goes well with the new vaccines before the winter of 2022, which is, away. And so I think that's very hard. Our techs go to meetings, people learn. And I think as people come in and out, or people behind masks, I think the challenge of keeping people up to date, keeping people engaged is going to be more of a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. And because those meetings were so important to the staff. They would go, they would spend time away, and they really learned a lot.
So B is from Baltimore her whole life, but so if I had to ask you this question, because I was cleaning up, like all of us now clean up our house because sometimes you have nothing better to do. So I always kept my ticket stubs for concerts. So I found this ticket stub the other day. So what do you, and you, we've been to a number of concerts together. What was the single best concert that happened?
Jackson Brown.
But okay, Jackson Brown, I would rate up there, but even better, there was one concert where I can swear half the people at the concert were from Hopkins. It was at the Baltimore Convention Center.
Oh yeah, who was that?
1991, Paul Simon.
Oh my gosh.
When he did that with all the music, what was that album? Bubble, the Boy in the Bubble, that whole album, when Paul won all the Grammys and everything else. That was I found the ticket. It was 1991. I'll never forget.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible concert in Baltimore, and there's been many incredible concerts, but I remember that was the only time Paul Simon ever was in Baltimore.
Yeah.
But anyway, so any final words? We'll stop here and we'll come back.
Well, no, I mean, I would just say, years ago, Dr. Fishman, you said CT is fun. And I think you said CT is fun because it's a lifelong learning process. And we continue to learn. It's so interesting. And we've seen it from start to finish. And it's an incredible journey. And yes, it's been an amazing, fun journey. And I thank you very much for that. Absolutely grateful to be here and to have this career with you. Thank you.
Okay, well, B's not going far, just up the highway. And maybe we'll do this again a different day. We'll catch it. We'll have some more questions. But I thank everyone for lot of good comments, B. I don't want to go through the comments. And thank you very much from across the street. And I'm going to try to sign us both off now without breaking anything.
Yeah.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.